Hi, I'm Martin Albrechtsen, and you're listening to Albion Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Baggies Podcast, where of course we're giving you all the latest news, views and opinions on all things Albion. Back again with a very special episode today. I'm delighted to be joined by a former West Bromwich Albion player and also Denmark international, Martin Albrechtsen. Martin, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks.
Yeah, good to hear, mate. Very, very delighted to have you on the show. Another former West Bromwich Albion guest, and delighted to be chatting through your career today, Martin. So, Martin, if we start with almost the beginning of your life, really, growing up in Denmark, was it something that you always wanted to be doing in being a footballer? Was that something that you always wanted to do?
Yeah, I mean, not when I started playing. It was like it was only when I was like 14, 15, I could see, okay, I'm better than some of my teammates, and then when I was like 16 years old, I got my first contract, and then it just took off like when I was like 17, 18, got debut on the first team, and then I knew, okay, this is something I want to do. So not to start with, but when I was in the teenage years, I could see that it was something I would like to do.
And so when you were growing up, obviously you say that it was a bit of a later thing in your life to decide I wanted to become a footballer. Who did you look up to as a player? Obviously you were a centre back or a defender yourself. Who did you kind of look up to and inspire you to be really professional in your football career?
I've never really had any like idols. When I was younger, that was like Maradona or Michael Laudrup, but they were not, of course, not the defenders, but that was someone I admired and looked up to. But I've never really had any like any defender type player to look up to. I mean, I've actually never looked at so much football games, and I only know the most famous names. I'm not like knowing every player in the Premier League. So yeah.
And you obviously you were Euro 1992. It was obviously a Denmark's massive tournament win in that year. You were I think you must have been about 12 then when that happened.
Yes.
And do you remember watching that on the TV? Was that something that spurred you on to do a bit of football yourself?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I remember I was after the final, me and my mom, we went into this square in Copenhagen, and people were just going crazy. I think we were there for like 2 minutes, and then we went back home again because it was too wild. So, but yeah, I was 12 years old at that point, and of course that maybe have done something in my mind that this could be a fun way to live or to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It must have been a fantastic story to be watching that in your home country. Obviously, Denmark didn't specifically qualify by their own right in that tournament, so it must have been a massive story in Denmark to get through there. But Martin, if we go on to talk about obviously your time at West Bromwich Albion, you made 118 league appearances for West Bromwich Albion between 2004 and 2008. Your arrival at West Brom came in 2004. How do you remember that move coming about, and what were your initial thoughts on coming to the club?
I remember we just won the Danish championship with FC Copenhagen, and on our way in to get celebrated in Tivoli, like a famous amusement park in Copenhagen, my manager stopped me and said, "Congratulations." I said, "With what?" And he said, FC Copenhagen and West Brom has agreed of a price on you. And then I said, okay, nice. So you have to go there tomorrow, he said, if you want, of course. And I said, all right. And then I went to Birmingham, to West Brom on the Monday, and then we agreed on a 4-year contract. So.
Wow, yeah. So it was amazing how quickly things can happen with that. Obviously, just like that, your move was sealed. It was sort of just like all right, let's
normally,
do that.
Normally you hear like rumors, and you know, okay, this club wants you, but this particular time it came like a bit of a shock actually. It was like, okay, let's do that. So that was a quite a bit weird experience.
Yeah, I bet. So you came into the club for a club record transfer, which is obviously not something that West Brom are particularly known for breaking consistently. Obviously, we don't like to spend that much money, but we spent a reasonable amount of money at that time, 2.7 million reportedly on you. What was it like coming into the club as a record transfer? Did that add a little bit of a pressure to the way you played your game?
Yeah, of course, it was a bit of a pressure, but I think was it Robbie Earnshaw they bought like a week later for even more money. So
yes.
So I wasn't the most expensive anymore. But yeah, of course, when a club spent a lot of money on you, you of course feel a bit of pressure, and also because in the beginning I don't know, maybe didn't perform as expected, so the pressure got even bigger within the first few months. So yeah, of course, I could feel the pressure, but I took it as a like a learning way. So that's
yeah. And you obviously you came into the club, and obviously, as you mentioned, Robert Earnshaw became the transfer the next week. But you came into the club obviously as a bit of you were from a different country, from Denmark, coming into an English club. Who sort of which sort of people at the club like made friends with you at the start? Who was sort of the people that welcomed you in the best, do you think?
I mean, it's always difficult to start a new in a new club, and even more difficult when it's a club in another country. I was quite young, I think, even though I was 24, I was still a young age. So of course it was difficult in the beginning, but I remember I lived in the same area as the same building as Jonathan Greening. So we became quite close, and were close during the 4 years I was there. So he was the main person I was hanging out with him and his family and my family. But of course, people in the club were like very friendly and very good to take you in and welcome you, even though the first few weeks was like some of the hardest I've tried in my life with the preseason. It wasn't fun actually when I think back of it, but the people around the club was nice to was sweet to take me in and help me.
Yeah, and that pre-season, obviously you came into the club, and that when you came in, I think it was Gary Megson that was the manager in charge when you first joined. How was that pre-season, and what was that like? I can imagine it was, as you mentioned, pretty grueling and pretty tough on you. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I came from little Denmark, secure Denmark, with all my family and friends, and the training is, I mean, it's still hard in Denmark, but compared to the 2 or 3 weeks, first 2 or 3 weeks in the preseason, it was nothing. It was quite tough, and I think it was even tougher with Gary Megson. Yeah, he was special. Let me say that. But again, I took it as a challenge and did my best.
Yeah, that's always good to hear. But Gary Megson was obviously a tough cookie, I think is probably the words to describe him, and he wanted the best out of you and of course all the players. How did you find him as a particular character in the dressing room and in and around the side?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you have to get to know him, and it's of course a bit difficult when in the beginning I wasn't playing that much, and the results maybe wasn't the best. So some days were a bit hard, but I mean, he was all right at the end. I mean, you could see he wanted to do the best for the club and for us. So it was nice to see, but some days you couldn't really see that. He was just like very angry and grumpy, and like I remember one training he stopped the training after 5 minutes and sent us in and said like, see you tomorrow, and like it wasn't a good sign when a manager does that. So but I mean, yeah, it was a tough few 3 or 4 months, the first period in West Brom.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, that's a typical Megson. That sounds like to be shutting down training after 5 minutes. Wow, that's definitely something that we've heard before. But Martin, you came on for your debut against Everton in the league as a substitute in your first season. How did you feel coming onto the pitch and starting that career off with West Brom in that way? How did you find that debut?
I remember it was a difficult game. I think we lost. Was it 3-0, 3-1 or something? I felt like we didn't have a chance, and I came in and I was just like trying to do my best. And so it wasn't one of the best debuts or games I've played. So yeah, that's my thought about that game.
Yeah, you did your best, which is always what Albion, which is what Albion fans would want to see. But you came into the Premier League, and you obviously mentioned you won the Danish Superliga, and you played in the Danish leagues before. How different did you find the Premier League to what you'd been experiencing before? How was that different? Obviously, you mentioned the training was a bit harder, but that was probably down more to Gary Megson than anybody else. How did you find the Premier League in comparison?
I mean, the Premier League itself wasn't any different compared to other leagues. I mean, you play 90 minutes and you're like 11 against 11, but the whole atmosphere around the games were like, of course, different. All the stadiums are nice, like 20 to 60,000 people, nice pitches. It was just like professional all the way through. And like in Denmark, you can go to another part of Denmark and play in front of like 4,000-5,000, and the atmosphere is not that nice. So the whole atmosphere and the stadiums were nice, and of course the quality in the games were of course on a much higher level. If you made like a mistake, you got like punished every time, or not every time, but yeah. More often than if you played in Denmark or in the Championship. So that was something you had to adapt, and it took maybe like 6 months before I was into that.
Yeah, and of course that must have been quite difficult coming into fuller stadiums. The crowd are obviously would have been much louder with the more people in the stadium. How did you? Well, like which stadium do you think that you found that the most at? Which stadium do you think was, obviously apart from West Brom Stadium, the Hawthorns, which stadium did you find the loudest and almost the most atmospheric in that way?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to say. Maybe like I don't know. Maybe the Arsenal, like the old stadium, Chelsea's. Yeah. I mean, Old Trafford, there was many people, but they were like quite quiet.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah, it's. I mean, every stadium had their own charm and atmosphere, so it's difficult to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Man United being lots of people, but not very much noise by the sounds of things. But Brian Robson came in during that first season in England, obviously, as you were still adjusting to life in England and the Premier League. But you obviously became a real key starter towards midway through that first season. How did you find Brian Robson during your time as an Albion player? How did you find him as a manager?
Well, I liked him. It's the short answer. But in the beginning, he came in, I think was it October or November or something?
Yes.
And I mean, he didn't know me. I didn't really know him, and I wasn't playing. And I was like out of the squad for like 2 or 3 months. I was in the squad like on away games, and got like picked out like the 18, 19, 20. Like in the stands, and then suddenly after New Year, I got the chance on the right back, and then I started playing regularly, and then we all know how that ended that season. But I mean I liked him as a person and as a manager. He really understood to get people together and get like this team spirit, teamwork, and got people to believe in things. So in that way, he was good. The tactical part of the game wasn't he very sharp on, but the other thing is, which is the most important thing, I think, is what's he good at.
Yeah, and you mentioned you played a significant part of your West Brom career, especially in the Premier League at right back. Obviously, you came in as a centre back in the middle of the defensive line, but you played right back. How did you find that different to playing at centre back? Did you find it more difficult, or did you feel it helped your development and easing into the English game a bit more?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was quick, and I could run a lot, so that helped me on the right back. It was fun, I remember, because I could get more forward, try to do some crosses and stuff like that. But my favorite position is centre back. It was, but maybe like in the Premier League, I was maybe a little bit too, I don't know, too small. I mean, too weak, because I mean, when you meet like big strikers, they were like some of them were like maybe over 2 meters high and big like wide shoulders and stuff like that. And when I came to England at first, maybe I wasn't that big and that strong. So it took me a few years to adapt, and maybe that's why I played right back for 2.5 seasons.
Yeah, fantastic. So you of course you played in that season, which of course I think it'd be West Brom fans would be very upset with me if I didn't talk about the ending to that season. The Great Escape is one of the biggest pieces of West Bromwich Albion history to this day. So how was that as an overall experience? Obviously, we're going into a bit more detail about it in a second, but what was that like as an experience, really, the whole season? Obviously, bottom of the league at Christmas, only Leicester City have survived from that position apart from your team. How did you find that as an overall experience?
Well, it was a tough season, but when it ended, as it ended, it was of course a good experience, and like I think it's like top 3 of my achievements in my career, and when I have to think back of my career, that's the main thing I'm gonna think back of. So yeah, that was a crazy last day of the season, but luckily it all went well.
Yeah, absolutely, it did. And that season, you mentioned about Brian Robson and his teamwork, and you had a good team, I'll say, from looking back at it, with all the fantastic players that we had in there, and all these Albion legends in there. But what was the sort of the secret to you staying up? How did you survive that season? Because it must have been so difficult mentally to think you're bottom at Christmas, and it looked pretty doomed for Albion, but you came through it. What was the secret to coming through that season for you, yourself, and the whole team?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just start picking up points after New Year's, like in January, and we got a few, or not few, because we only got five victories that season. So we got like maybe one victory and a few draws, and then we start like, okay, we got some points, and there wasn't very far up to the teams above us. So I think we just got the belief to believe that we could do it, and then at the end we were close to the teams above us, and we had a chance to stay up the last day, and luckily the 3 teams above us, they didn't win, so and we did, so that was nice.
Yeah, and that final day must have been such an experience for you, because what did you know about the other teams during that game? Obviously, you won your own. We won our own game 2-0, so that was what we needed to do. But what did you know during that day whilst you were playing about the other teams' results? Did the situations keep changing? Obviously, the situation did keep changing in other games, but how much did you know about that during the game?
I mean, you could hear the crowd like going, like you could hear them make like noises or like cheering, and then you knew, okay, something is going on in the other games, but you didn't know which game or how many games that was going in our favor. I would just hear the crowd like maybe like 4, 5, 6 times, but yeah, and then at the end, I remember we went out to the sideline, and then we were there for like 10 or 20 seconds, and then it all we knew it was the other games were finished, and they didn't win. So that was I still, when I talk about it, I still get like goosebumps. So it was nice to think back of.
Yeah, fantastic. So obviously that pitch was full at the end of the game, not with players, but with fans. The fans came onto the pitch, and you were all celebrating with them. What was that moment like, and how much did you enjoy that?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds nice, but when it happened, it was quite chaotic actually. As people were a little bit too crazy and like trying to, I don't know, take off our shirts and shorts and stuff like that. So I remember we just actually hurried to get into the dressing room, so nothing bad would happen. Yeah. I don't know what should happen, but I mean, it was quite chaotic and crazy. So when I think back, I wish I would have stayed out a bit longer to enjoy it and yeah, just to take it all in.
Yeah, but you say you wouldn't have, you probably, if you'd have stayed out, you wouldn't have made it back with your shirt, you say.
yeah. So but it was nice. I remember seeing like pictures of Kieran Richardson. It was like he's being carried of all the crowd and stuff like that. It looks quite funny. So but it was nice.
Yeah, but you got away at least. You managed to make it away. I think a lot of fans made it away with pieces of the pitch, and they clipped out bits of the cliff, the turf, and then a bit of the goal as well. The nets, they nicked a bit of the nets. So I think it must have been a bit of a repair job afterwards for the groundsman. But so obviously that following season after the Great Escape, which was obviously a fantastic thing, how did you go into that season feeling? Obviously the 05-06 season, how did you go into that season feeling? Because obviously you completed this fantastic season before. What did you feel going into that one?
Well, I can't really remember what we were thinking, but just remember it was too bad that we couldn't follow up on the ending. You always say the second season is always the hardest, and it was. So we couldn't really continue our belief in things, and I remember it was also a tough long season, and I think we just at the end we just lost belief, and we couldn't get ourselves to get the victories that we needed.
Yeah, and that relegation the second time around, was that a bit more, that hit a bit harder, because obviously you'd had to work incredibly hard to get that survival the first time. Did it feel like you kind of undone that really hard work that you did the season before? Was that the case? Yeah,
you're right. I mean, it felt like that we worked hard for nothing. Of course, we got another year in the Premiership, but it was quite disappointing to be relegated the year after. But I must say, I mean, we bounced back quite well my third year in the Championship, and of course we went up again the year after. So yeah.
Yeah, and so you went down and you played in the Championship, which for a lot of players, players who do really well in the Premier League can sometimes struggle in the Championship because it's so different almost. How did you find it different to what you'd played in the Premier League?
I mean, I always, when I talk to people, they say, "Oh, how is it like to play in the Premier League compared to the Championship?" And I actually think the Championship is a much harder league to play in because the tempo is so high, and you have to be so physical, strong to play there. Maybe not it's not the most beautiful football, and the skill, what's called like the technique. People are not that technical. yeah, you know what I mean. You just play with power and pace and long balls, and it's a long hard fight and many games and stuff like that. So compared to the Premier League, you have to be ready to play there. The Premier League, there's a higher level of technique, and your mistakes are gonna be punished. So yeah, but luckily we got in the playoff final, and but unfortunately we lost that. But it was nice to be like to win some games again and be in the top of, even though it was only the championship.
Yeah, and obviously you came into the Premier League first and then Championship after. Do you perhaps wish it might have been the other way round? And would you have rather done the Championship first and then gone up to the Premier League? Because do you think it might have helped you a bit more going into the Premier League? Obviously, you say you struggled a bit in those first few months. Do you think that might have helped?
Yeah. I mean, on my own situation and on my own play, it could have helped me if it has been the other way around. But yeah, it wasn't, and it's like that.
Yeah, definitely. So you had Tony Mowbray as your West Bromwich Albion manager, who's, I think, probably from all the people I've spoken to who are West Brom players on the podcast before, I think actually nearly all of them have had him as a manager at West Brom. How did you find him as a coach? Obviously, we've spoken about Robson, we've spoken about Megson. How did you find Tony Mowbray as a manager?
Well, he was good. I remember he was Brian Robson was not as good tactical. Tony Mowbray was. He was very good of see how to play the other teams, and like a lot of video analyze and stuff like that. So he was good on that point. Maybe he missed a little bit of what Robson had, like getting people together and like team bonding. But he was a bit of a mix between Megson and Robson, and that's I liked him.
Yeah, that's nice. So, that's good. So, yeah. That's good to hear. So, was you lost that playoff final at Wembley? I think that one was against Derby County, which was pretty heartbreaking, I think, probably for you, because I'm sure you'll have wanted to go back to the Premier League, and I'm sure so will the rest of the squad. What was that experience like, and how did you find that playoff final? Obviously, the result wasn't what you wanted, but the experience of playing at Wembley, which was a big stadium, what did you think of that?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't playing. I was selected for the stands that game, so it was even harder not to do something about it. So, but I remember it was I mean, up to the game it was a good day, but after the game it was really sad and not funny. And we just we all went on holiday the day after, and after the game we had. I think the club had arranged a little like a party, something. It's somewhere around London, and it wasn't really a party. It was more like a funeral. So it wasn't a funny night. So yeah, the experience at Wembley and up to the game, it was nice. But of course, we all expected to win because we were a better team than Derby, and we also showed that in the game. But like, I mean, one mistake and they won 1-0 and we couldn't score. So it wasn't funny after.
No, it certainly wasn't, and that party doesn't sound very fun at all after that game. But obviously, continue with the subject of Derby. You left the club in 2008 and you went to Derby County afterwards. Obviously, you went to Derby County. How did you feel after leaving the club, and why did you leave, really?
Yeah, why did I leave? I also asked myself that question even today. I remember we were negotiating for like a new contract in West Brom. We couldn't really agree on the last like few pounds actually, and then Derby came in with a good offer, and then I thought, okay, if West Brom don't want to pay me the last bit I want, then I just say fuck it and leave. and also after 4 years, I could feel, okay, maybe I want to try something new, but I wasn't tired of West Brom or anything, so I actually wanted to stay, but then I just took the chance with Derby and signed a 2-year contract, and when I think back of it, I should have signed a new contract with West Brom. I actually regret that. But you can always be like smart after. So yeah.
Yeah, it sounds very West Bromwich, that does, to not want to give you the extra literal few pounds. That does sound very familiar for West Brom. But you made over, obviously we mentioned 114 league appearances, but you made so many appearances for West Brom, and you stayed for 4 years, as you mentioned. What made you want to stay at West Brom so long? What was it that really drew you to the club for that amount of time?
I mean, I just liked to be there. It was like a very like a family club. I think when if we lost, like when we went to our cars afterwards, people wasn't that angry, or they were just like trying to cheer us up or say bad luck, hope you win next time, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the crowd were like, they were very nice to us compared to, I remember my first game in Derby where we lost my first game, and people like really like swearing and like said fuck off and stuff like that. It was quite a change compared to West Brom. So yeah, nice city, nice club. It was a good time. So I really enjoyed my 4 years in the club, and I wouldn't mind if it had been like 6 or 7 years. But
yeah, that's good to hear. So Martin, I'm just going to move on to ask you a few more general questions that I like to ask every player that I tend to have on the podcast. So if we start with, who was the best player that you think that you or one of the best players that you think you played against, like on the opposition team for you? Who do you think would have been obviously it would have been a striker for you to deal with, or a winger? Who did you find difficult to play against?
I always say like I mean, we played all the big ones like Rooney, Ronaldo, Drogba and stuff like that. But I remember like games against Chelsea away, we lost like a couple of times 4-0 or something. Damon Duff.
Yes, I remember him.
Like he was a winger, and I was a right back, and I had a hard time in those games. So I always mentioning him when I got the question asked.
Yeah, and what was it about him that was so difficult to deal with? Was obviously I remember him. I think he was Irish, and he was quite tricky, wasn't he? How did you find? What was it about him that made it so difficult?
We just I mean, he was just quick, and like he always ran deep and wanted the ball, and didn't give you any breaks during the game, and with the rest of the Chelsea team, like it was just like, we didn't have a chance to be honest. So that was I just remember those games as pretty hard compared to like, I remember we drew at the Old Trafford against United. They were a bit easier to play against. I think also like City, they were also a better team to play against than Chelsea away. It was always hard.
Yeah, I bet it still is. It still is for, well, to be honest, we won 5. I don't know if you saw, we won 5-2 there last year. So that was
I saw that.
Yeah, that was a bit of a weird one. But yeah, Martin, who would you say was the best player that you played with at West Brom? Who would you say that, or maybe even a few names if you could reel off a little bit of a list of players that you enjoyed playing with?
I mean, Jonathan Greening was a good midfielder. Yep. Paul Robinson, good left back. Really good left back, not just good, but and then Kevin Phillips was also like a really good striker. So and those three we also got along outside the pitch. So that's that's I actually really miss them when I talk about them, but I still keep in contact with Robbo and Jono.
That's really nice to hear. Yeah, they were really those three are, especially in that season, were just so important, weren't they? And obviously, Martin, you had some great moments playing for West Brom. What do you think was the best sort of moment, whether it be a goal or a match or something like that? What would you say was the best?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, of course, my goal against the Wigan.
Your
something
first
that
goal.
Of course, the last the Great Escape game, and then of course the FA Cup semi-final. Even though we lost against Portsmouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then of course the whole season in where we win the championship. That was the whole season was like a good experience.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's difficult to pick one out of the things I've just mentioned.
Yeah, and it's been fantastic, Martin, to go through these memories with you and all these fantastic bits of your Albion career. But Martin, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'm sure lots of Albion fans have really enjoyed listening to your time at the Hawthorns, especially the Great Escape. I think that's something that West Brom fans are really keen to hear about. So Martin, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, absolutely a pleasure. But thank you very much, Albion fans, for listening to the Baggies Podcast, a special episode with Martin Albrechtsen. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.